I'm going to take the teeth off this now and boil off all the wax, get it ready for processing. What I've done, something that we always used to do when I used stone matrices before we got silicone, and I much preferred the silicone. I've trimmed the matrix a little bit. Just makes it neater, it makes it easier to see how it fits, a little nicer to work with. Yeah, just makes your day. Especially if you're working in the plaster area and you're preparing it for someone else, it just makes their life a little bit better. You can see that the matrix is fitting to the model. You can see how the matrix is going over the clasp, which has been matrixed onto the model with acrylic. So there's the acrylic matrixing the clasps onto the model. So just squaring it up makes it a little bit neater. Here over the incisal of the teeth, we don't need a lot of stone. You don't actually want a lot of stone because it's going to get in the way of you being able to smooth the acrylic to the lingual of the teeth that you put in when you put them when you put it on the model. So I'm going to reduce that stone there. I didn't have you do this on your first one because I figured that knowing that you were going to be trying to do it all in one day, I figured trying to get you to smooth it up would just be that one step too much. And a lot of you had it very, very thin. So make it a little bit heftier this time. Give yourself a good few millimeters. It should be at least about 5 millimeters thick. The great thing about stone is if you make it too thin, it'll still work, but give yourself a little bit of meat because it makes it easier to grab and work with. Okay, so I've got kettles of boiling water going here. So I have an old style kettle there which doesn't shut off. This is one of these ones that shuts off automatically when it gets to boiling. Old style kettle can be really, really useful because it's going to keep going at a rolling boil. I don't know if you guys can see the steam coming out of it, but I want that water to be really, really hot. I know. Boiling the water now, or boiling the water more, doesn't make the water any hotter, but what it does is it puts more energy into the water and makes it steam off more easily. We need to pour water over this model in order to get the wax off it. That's going to make the model wet, which means we won't be able to put more wax on it to do our blockout. So we've got to wait for it to dry, or we have to find a way to dry it quickly. An easy old way that we used to do it was with our kettle of boiling water at a really good rolling boil, because when I pour that really, really hot water over the model, the water has so much excess energy from being at a rolling boil, it's going to steam off. It's going to flash off into steam very quickly, and that's going to dry the surface of the model. So it's a quick and easy way to surface dry the model when you need to, when you have a model which is wet or moist and you need to make the surface of it dry very quickly. Counterintuitively, pouring boiling water on the model will dry the model. So I'm going to pop the teeth off here that I set up. Take as much of the wax off as I can. This is where, if you have a little strainer, your own little strainer comes in very useful. And I've just got a little glass. You can use. I used to use the medicine cups here. They're getting harder to find. But these are actually plastic IKEA shot glasses. I think it was $1.25 for 4 of them. They work really well, and not surprisingly, a shot glass is exactly the same size as a 1 ounce measuring cup or 30 ml measuring cup. It just doesn't have the millimeter graduation on it. So I'll pop off the wax that I can, because it'll just make it easier to boil the rest off. Don't scrape your model, just pop the wax. And if you can't get it all, that's fine. So I'm going to cheat because I've got my little, again, IKEA, my wife bought this. It's a little strainer that fits on the corner of my sink, so I'm going to put it down under the strainer that's got my teeth in it. I'm going to put a little bit of dish soap in with the teeth. The dish soap emulsifies the molten wax. So as the wax melts, it's going to soften. The wax, molten wax, floats on top of the water in a very thin layer. And that's why in your boilouts or such, you'll get that thin layer of molten wax. And when you dip something into the water, it gets coated in that thin layer of molten wax. What dish soap does, or any kind of soap, is it emulsifies that thin layer of molten wax, which means it pulls it together into little globs so it doesn't spread out over everything, and it basically keeps your water cleaner. So I have two kettles here. This one I boiled, but it's one of the ones with a self shut off. So I'm just pouring water into the little cup that I put the teeth in. I put the teeth in a cup just because it's really hard to hit the teeth with boiling water if you're just using the strainer like this. The much better thing is in dental supply houses they call it a clip clap mesh. It's a little mesh holder that's used actually for making tea with loose tea. It's just two little wee mesh balls that open up like this, and you can put your teeth in, and then it works wonderfully. I think I gave mine to my son. So backup is I always have some little cup like this, and if I put the teeth in the cup with a little bit of wax, the hot water will soften the wax. The soap will sorry, don't put it in with wax, put it in with soap. The soap will keep the wax emulsified so it doesn't just stick to the teeth, and that will clean the wax off of the teeth. Now I can just dump that over, swirl it around a little bit, and that's looking pretty good. I can give it a final little wash. I don't know if you can see, but as I'm trying to do this, the teeth are just dancing around and running out of the way of the water. So that's where that little cup comes in very useful. Okay. So my teeth are pretty good now. So what I want to do now is I want to try to dry this model. So I'm going to take my really hot rolling boil water in my old style kettle, and I'm just going to pour it over the model. You can see how much that's steaming. By the way, don't hold your hand over this as you do this. And now I'm just going to take the model, stand it on end there, so that any excess water runs off. I don't know if you guys can see the steam just rising off of that model, but you can almost see the model drying off as the steam rises off of it, the excess energy in that rolling boil water. I'll give that a minute to stop steaming and cool down, and then that will be dry enough to go ahead and do our wax up. And you can see the purpose of these matrices is that we've now boiled off all of the wax that was holding those clasps in place, but the clasps are still securely held in place. You can also boil the matrix. I didn't, because I didn't get any wax stuck to it, but you can. It's not a bad idea. Okay, so we have our teeth, we have our model, we have our matrix. I'm going to let that cool for a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to do the blockout before we process the acrylic.